And let's bring in the National Senator Matt Canavan now. Senator, good to see you. Thanks for your time, as always. So on to these gas shortages and these dire predictions once more out of Victoria. Are you expecting AEMO to intervene again?
Well, I hope the government does something. The new government just seems asleep at the wheel. I think they've lost the excuse that it's their first day on the job. We heard months ago that they were going to look at changing the Australian domestic gas security mechanism that we put in place, but we've heard nothing since. What's going on? I mean, we've been calling, the LNP have been calling for the government to trigger that mechanism from the moment this gas crisis emerged a couple of months ago. By doing so, they would have, I'm sure, got more gas. It is true that the actual mechanism itself wouldn't come into effect until January next year. But when we did threaten to pull it, when I threatened to pull it and was a resources minister back in 2017, within days there was gas flowing to domestic consumers in Australia because the gas industry did not want that big stick wielded. I worry here that the new government is like a dog that's caught the car. They just don't know what to do right now.
So back on AEMO though, it's quoting total system supply threat. That sounds pretty serious with what's going on down in Victoria at the moment. So back to that question. I mean, does AEMO pull the trigger again? Does it intervene?
Well, it's not up to AEMO. AEMO is the energy regulator, and they're providing the government and all of us here this information. It is a crisis. It is a very worrying sign having our storages at record lows there. It's still within a very cold winter in Victoria. But it's not up to AEMO to make these decisions. They don't have the power under the Act. It's up to the government and the ministers. Where is Catherine King? Something's got to happen here. Sorry, Madeleine King. I got that the wrong King, wrong Minister King. Madeleine King, where is she? What is she doing here as Resources Minister to fix this problem? Because people are facing massive increases in their electricity bills. They don't know if they can keep their houses warm in months to come. And we have a government that seems to be completely out of their depth here when it comes to solving this cost of living crisis.
When it comes to this Iona plant, though, is New South Wales and Queensland to blame for sapping it of supply?
Well, look, this is where I do think we need some action here to protect domestic sources. I do think mistakes were made about a decade ago by governments of all political persuasions in approving the coal seam gas expansions, mainly in Queensland, not in New South Wales, and not having some of that gas reserved for Australian use. So that is a problem. As I said, with that mechanism we put in place years ago, we've given the government the tools to bring some of that gas back when needed, when there's a shortage, which clearly there is here. Why doesn't the government trigger this and declare the shortage and keep that gas for Australians? We should be putting Australians first. So we can all distract ourselves with the mistakes that were made, as I say, 10 or more years ago, or we could focus now on what we can do to fix this problem. And I don't see a lot of problem solving happening from this new government.
Just back to Chris Bowen, he says he's open to the ratchet mechanism, so you would have climate targets once in legislation that would be able to be increased. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's totally unconstitutional and undemocratic to deny future Australians the right to decide their own policies. And I don't see how that can work anyway. I mean, a law passed by this parliament can be changed by a future parliament, and that is right and proper in a democracy, because it should be up to the Australians in 2030 and 2040 to decide the laws that affect them. I mean, the only way to really lock something in here, even then not completely locked in, but to lock it in a more permanent way, would be to change the Constitution. Is that what Chris Bowen is proposing here, that we change our Constitution to enshrine emissions targets? I mean, it seems to me that the people pushing these targets know or don't have a lot of confidence in their policy solutions. That's why they want this ratchet. That's why they want to deny future Australians the agency to change, because they know, they can see right now the consequences of this radical climate action of not developing our gas resources in Victoria under Dan Andrews. He has actually changed their constitution, which is just an act of parliament, to ban fracking. The consequences of these radical climate actions mean higher costs of living, very big threats to our manufacturing industry. And once that bill comes in, people are probably going to change their mind about these policies. That's why they want this ratchet.
Okay, just a final one here on the environment. It's the State of the Environment report that Tanya Plibersek is going to be releasing today. It's found that Australia has lost the most amount of mammals out of any continent. Plibersek has put this down to your government and a decade of inaction. What are your thoughts on what you've been able to read so far?
Well, look, I have it. It's a 2,000-page report. It'll be very interesting to see whether this apparent loss of mammals has occurred in the last 10 years, apparently according to Tanya. I don't know. That seems a bit of a stretch to me, but let's get to the detail, because often the summary that comes out from these types of reports does not reflect the scientific detail behind it. So I'll wait to see that. This just seems like a distraction attempt from the government. As I say, they've completely dropped the ball on the cost of living crisis affecting Australians. They're not doing anything about it. And so they're just rolling this out to just try and distract people from that.
But I mean, the government could have released it last year but decided not to. Is that because you knew it was going to be bad reading?
Powers on that, Peter. I'm not sure when this report was provided to the minister. As I say, I think the details are a lot more important. Often the headlines that you see in the newspapers are there for dramatic impact, not reflective of the real issues.
Okay, Matt Canavan, we're out of time. Appreciate your time, though. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.